Hi guys, and welcome back to EasyPy3. In the last section we started off by making the computer talk. In this section we'll learn how to talk to the computer and make it do things for us. But before we do that, we need to know how to store the things we tell it. And that's where variables come in. How, you may ask? Well, let's just use some imagination first. Imagine we have some containers and we have some stuff to store. We would open one of them and put the stuff inside, right? And then we would close it and put a label in it to remind us what's inside. Well, think of variables in the same way as containers, and the stuff we're storing is data. Now, every variable has three things. It starts with a name, like the label on our container. Then it has an assignment operator, the equals sign. If you recall the last lesson, we spoke about operators, and we said that they are special symbols that perform an action. Well, in this case, it's assigning a name to something. In our container analogy, this would be the same as putting the stuff inside the container. Finally, we have the value, the stuff in our container. This can be anything, as you will soon see. So how do we create a variable? Let's look at the following example. First, you write a name on the left. In this case, I've called it data. Then the assignment operator, and on the right we have the integer 1. That's it, you've created a variable. How do we then use the variables? Well, firstly, any value can be assigned to a variable. In other words, all the data types you have studied so far and the ones to come can be assigned to a variable. You can use the variables in the print function by putting the name as the argument. Just make sure the variable exists before using print or you will get an error, as the Python interpreter reads line by line. You can also use many other functions with the variables too. For example, you can use the type function, which will check the data type of a variable. Another thing to remember is that variables are also case sensitive, so make sure you use the same case or you will get an error. Okay, so what if we want to change the data being held by a variable? Well, let's go back to our container. If we wanted to change the content, we would remove the stuff and replace it with new stuff, right? Well, it's that easy in Python too. For example, if we have a variable with the value as an integer 1, we can just go ahead and assign a new value, in this case a string 1 to it. This also highlights that Python is a dynamically typed language, which means you do not need to declare which data type you will be using with your variables, as we went from using an integer to a string. There are static languages where you have to declare which data type you will be using with your variable. Finally, we can assign new names to older variables. For example, we can assign the data variable to another variable called new, and now new holds the same value as data. There are some restrictions when it comes to naming variables, or anything you name in Python for that matter. Firstly, it cannot be one of the Python keywords. These are reserved words which have a predefined meaning, so they cannot be changed. If we enter them on the idle program, they will change color to orange by default, so you'll know when you've entered a keyword. Since Python is a case-sensitive language, you can change the case of one of the letters in a keyword in order to use it. For example, the capital T in true can be changed to lowercase t, and so on. The second restriction is that the name cannot start with a number. You can have a number after you've written a letter, but not before. Finally, you cannot have a space in the variable name, as that will cause an error. Nor can you have special characters such as the arithmetic operators. The only exception is underscore. Now that we have covered what not to do, let me give you some good practices to employ. When writing a program, you should use names that can be understood by someone else reading your code. For example, look at the list provided on the right. Whilst the names are allowed in Python, no one reading your code will know what they mean, and if the name is too long, you will end up making a mistake. So try to keep your names short and to the point. The guideline style for variable names is to write it all lowercase, with the words separated by underscores. This is known as snake case. Another popular style is to use camel case, where the first word is in lowercase and the following words start with a capital letter. The main thing is you should pick one and be consistent with it. Now it's time for you to practice. I've prepared a coding exercise for you to start creating your own variables. As always, if you have any questions, please do ask.